Da, 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 da. Hello there, Gindiana Bones here, as ever, ready and raring to talk on the topic of the day. Today's topic being Prometheus. I recently had the pleasure of watching Prometheus on DVD. No Blu-rays in Archaeosoup Towers, no, we're old school here. Yes, so we watched the film. Me, Mr. Soup, and also Mrs. Soup, who were watching the film together. And I must say, it struck me as rather bizarre, because there are many archaeological inaccuracies which are rather unforgivable, in my humble opinion. And all it would have taken is a small phone call to someone, somewhere, anywhere, any department, any archaeologist, almost anywhere, to rectify some of these problems. So I shall go through them and share them with you. Unfortunately, though, I've been advised that I cannot really use any images from the film for fear of being taken off the YouTube box. So you have to sort of use your imagination. I'll be descriptive as possible. So first of all, we have our two protagonist archaeologists, Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway, and we find them at the beginning of the film. This film is actually anchored in archaeology. We find them at the beginning of the film, somewhere on an island in the north of Scotland, so like a Scottish island, well, they're doing something. Well, they're not entirely sure which archaeological process they're undertaking. Some sort of survey come lunch slash excavation sort of thing. It's sort of somewhere between the three, really. They seem to be sort of eating, possibly surveying and digging at the same time. And then we flash to inside a cave where our heroine, Elizabeth, is scraping away at a wall, and the wall sort of collapses in front of it. This sort of geological formation, not really a wall as such, gives away rather easily, I would say. The sort of pokes through, poof, you see her eye and she smiles. And then behind it we see the image which sort of sets off the whole film, which is this sort of man, or this figurine, this humanoid thing, pointing to a bunch of planets in the sky and the stars miles away. And the archaeologists gather together, with her having now cleared a doorway, essentially, to this space very quickly. And she says it's an invitation to the stars. And thus we have our film. Now this is all grand, I'm willing to buy into science fiction, I really am. I don't want you to think that I'm one of those people who's a bit, a bit sad and can't take science fiction as fiction rather than attempting to be fact. But there's a glaring error here, and that is that the drawing is dated to around about 35,000 years ago. Well, unfortunately, this drawing can't exist. You see, that island was actually, it was under ice, an awful lot of ice at that point. It was uninhabitable, and therefore people couldn't have been drawing in a cave. Now, you see, the reason why this bothers me is, why didn't they just ask someone? They could have set that cave almost anywhere in Europe, anywhere in Britain, whatever. But instead they pick a spot which was under meters, if not miles, of ice at the time. It's just lazy, very, very lazy. Also, there's that interpretation of the invitation that sort of bothers me a little bit. Where's the invitation? It's people pointing at the stars. Men, women, human beings have been pointing at the stars and observing them for many years, and not once have archaeologists thought, well, that's an invitation to the stars, obviously. Yes. And then we go into this sort of, we're off, we're on the spaceship and we're going that way towards space. And there's a little lecture which is given where the same image is spotted all around the world in archaeology, in Egypt and all the rest of it, Maya, so on and so forth, Mayans. This is a very dodgy idea. I mean, yes, again, it's science fiction, that's fine, but it's very, I don't know, they all look a bit too, neat and tidy for my liking. I'd much rather have seen something with a bit more interpretation, a few more steps going on, rather than just, look, here is a series a series of monograms across the world. GB everywhere, Gindiana Bones, here, there, everywhere. It's too neat and tidy, you see. You needed a little bit of investigation, maybe, would have made it a bit better. Whereas as it is, it sort of reads as pseudo-archaeology, the idea that, you know, well, as Charlie says, you know, countries and communities and cultures which had no contact over the space of thousands of years all shared precisely the same iconography at certain moments. It's very pseudo-archaeological. I don't particularly like that all that much. But it is, nonetheless, it is science fiction. Anyway, we arrive at this planetoid, LV, not 426 or 246, it's LV something. We arrive there, and the first thing we see is Charlie going, wait, nature doesn't build in straight lines, this way to the thing is over there. But this is very dodgy. You know, nature does build in straight lines in many instances, as Mr. Soup has recently pointed out in the We Don't Do Aliens video. You know, geological formations are often very straight. Of course, he is pointing at a road, so fair enough. But he's an archaeologist. I wonder why it is that they don't have, I don't know, the geologists talking about formations, or maybe they don't have, I don't know, they haven't done some sort of long-range scanning of the area first to get a pinpointed area, rather than just having a bloke going, over there, that way. It's very strange. Anyway, I am nitpicking, I'll give you that. I am very much nitpicking, I know. But then there's the issue of rushing in. They kind of rush into this thing. Now, I'm no interplanetary explorer. I have been to Mars once, those of you who have been following my adventures. But, you know, I would say if you go to a planet for the first time, it's probably a good idea not to rush into the nearest structure, you know, and go, whoa, we're here. But they go very quickly, and Charlie is the instigator. He goes, I want to open my Christmas presents now. So they rush along. Oh, by the way, this video's got spoilers in it, just to warn you. Oh dear, I should have said that at the beginning. Spoiler alert, yes. Anyway, so they rush in, which is very, I think, very unscientific, you know, scientific. Maybe they should have taken some measurements, or, you know, been there for maybe 24 hours or something, just to see what the thing is. Maybe, you know, scan the place. They're in a spaceship, scan it first. Anyway, they rush in. And then the next thing that sort of bothers me is the surveyor. They have this geologist dude with them, which is fair enough. And he's got a mohawk, and he's got sort of crazy eyes. Clearly, he's going to go nuts and die horribly at some point. He's just sort of, and he loves rocks, apparently. I love rocks, he says, you know, emphatically. And he's got these cool little laser things which he sends out, and they sort of scan the place and give you an image of the area. And you're like, cool, that's quite funky. But then he goes on to get lost. Now, I'm not an interplanetary explorer per se, but if I was going on an expedition to another world, I would take a geologist or, you know, a surveyor who could, I don't know, read his own maps. Because doesn't that sort of lead to the conclusion that perhaps you can't trust his maps after all, because he gets incredibly lost and then ends up dying horribly. Yeah. Another nitpick, I know, I'm being somewhat unfair. Oh yes, Charlie then goes on to breathe in this atmosphere, again a little bit hurriedly. He's the first off the block, and in that sense his character is very consistent, I suppose. But but even on Earth there are many sites where it's very dangerous just to take your helmet off or whatever it is, you know, your breathing apparatus, and risk breathing the air. There actually are sites in Egypt, for example, which were very much laced with poisonous dust, so that the atmosphere would become poisonous if you disturbed the area. So it's a bit risky taking off the helmet. Not very good archaeological practice, really, I don't think. Of course, there's the risk of contagion, this kind of thing. They then unwittingly, through a robot called David, they find some security footage, and they run after this event, this what looks like a rather horrible event, if you ask me. And then David opens a door, and they go into this room with the door having decapitated a man, one alien thing. And again, it's all a bit hurried, you know. Why on earth would you hurry into a situation where security footage was saying bad things happened here, just here, bad things happened, they occurred, and we're going to rush in there. Supposedly, that's what they say. Not a very big fan of that idea. You should be much more careful. And also, what happened to the recording of things? They're archaeologists, they're meant to be recording what they found, but instead they're just sort of, you know, going through, and they're being very much like a bull in a china shop. Yes. So when they're in there, they touch some gloop, and this gloop results in all sorts of chaotic nastiness, alien type stuff occurs, and that's where the film really gets all, you know, Ridley Scottish and very alieny, as it were. But again, in terms of practice, good practice, touching the gloop is a bit dodgy, isn't it? Just going, oh, I'll touch that thing. It could be acidic, it could be poisonous, it could eat through the polymer of my spacesuit, but I don't care. I'm going to touch it. Not very good practice as well. But many scientists have pointed this out in critiquing Prometheus. I know, but I just thought I'd say that. Anyway, what bothers me though is when they're in the thing, Charlie says, "Oh, this is just another tomb. I don't like this at all. Just another tomb." Can you imagine what would happen if people like Howard Carter had that attitude? Yes, I know, they went to meet their genetic makers, supposedly, in this far-off galaxy, so they were hoping to meet some living people. But you're an archaeologist, man! Man up! You know, if you find a tomb, that's blemmin' brilliant. Dig the tomb. Record the tomb. Don't have a hissy fit. Very annoying. So, anyway, as he's in there, just a tomb, he says, even though the evidence in the tomb could lead to a living civilization, who knows, but no, he just has a hissy fit. Anyway, something happens, and things start, you know, going wrong, and they have to run out of the tomb, this space with lots of gloopy blobs of, you know, cylinders with gloop in them, and Elizabeth goes very quickly, she says, "Quickly, run, bag the head," she says. Now again, it's not the best archaeological practice to just, you know, run along and just bag a head. In fact, hang on a second. Here you go, here's Helga. Remember Helga? Head of all wisdom. Yes, you're beautiful. Anyway, if I was to find Helga's head in a tomb like this, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't just grab it and run. I would very carefully, you know, record it and make sure it was well stored and packaged, and then maybe take it back to a lab very carefully, because obviously it's a rare thing to find someone's head like this. Yes. But you don't just go, "Quick, bag the head, let's run," and run away. No. Not very archaeological in my sense, my opinion rather, in the sense of archaeology as it is understood by me, that is to say. Yes. I suppose what I'm getting at is that this whole expedition could quite possibly have benefited from biologists being there rather than archaeologists, possibly with an archaeological element, of course, to help with interpretation and you know, understanding the cultural context of biological finds. But this was really a biological mission, really, wasn't it? They were seeking out people. Maybe some sort of anthropologists would have been good. But yes, these archaeologists, they really made a bit of a hash of things, I think. And they could have done better. Now, it's also worthwhile saying at the end of this video, my critique, as it were, to one side, hello Helga, that I'm not one of those people who's entirely boring. One of the most incredibly boring people I've ever met really cannot watch any form of sci-fi without saying, well, it's promoting bad science. I will not watch that. That is promoting bad science. So I suppose I would like to end this video on a note of saying, by the way, folk, Prometheus was science fiction, and after all, it is just a bit of fun. So I suppose all my critiques are sort of invalidated by that statement, criticisms rather, yeah. But it is nonetheless something which I'd like to point out, not least the fact that they find the drawing on an island which was under a massive sheet of ice at the beginning of the film. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Prometheus. Please do feel free to share your own if you have other archaeological criticisms. And yes, I'm back to looking at DVDs. So hopefully next time we'll be looking at another one. Until next time, folks, take good care of your gin bottles. Make sure that they don't crack or break. And also take good care if you find a head on an archaeological site. And with that in mind, I shall give you my customary farewell. Cheers.